Aviation takes decarbonization seriously, and aviation is united. Therefore, I'm pleased that in this closing press conference for the event that is organized by ICAO and hosted with the generosity of GCAA here in UAE, we have the industry that shows that we as an industry, we are united. And I will ask first to give the floor to the President of the ICAO Council, Mr. Salvatore Sciacchitano, for his opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kostas. So we are very much pleased today to announce that the third conference on aviation and alternative fuels has adopted a global framework aiming at deploy and accelerate the production and use of sustainable aviation fuels in aviation. Let's remind that this conference is being called following the assembly held last year by ICAO, when the member states of ICAO adopted a historical resolution establishing the long-term aspirations goal with net zero objective in aviation by 2050. One of the components needed to reach that goal in 2050 is the deployment and the scaling up of the production of a sustainable aviation fuel between now and then. As important milestone towards the decarbonization in 2050, this conference has been called in order to adopt a framework which will provide member states and stakeholders, fuel producers, to accelerate the use and the production. This framework is based on a certain number of pillars: policy, regulatory framework, implementation support, and financing. The objective is to move from the current situation where sustainable aviation fuel is produced in very limited quantity and has a cost that is higher from the traditional kerosene, to reach a status where the sustainable aviation fuel will become more accessible, more affordable, this present in the world, in all the regions of the world, so that the use can be gradually implemented. The current policy has established as a target, quantitative target, to have a use of a sustainable aviation fuel by 5% between now and 2030 in terms of reduction of the carbon intensity. So it's a use of sustainable aviation fuel that will have to imply a reduction of 5% of carbon intensity emission. This will allow investors, provide investors with a clear framework that will allow to increase the demand and will allow the investors and the producers to implement the investments for the deployment of sustainable aviation fuels. This is the general introduction that I wanted to give to you. As the outcome is a result of a conference, multilateral conference with the negotiations that require a lot of compromises between the parties, given the difference and the priorities that is normal that would happen in this kind of conferences. But what is important is that the goal has been achieved. This goal is global, will not imply binding obligations to individual member states, but will provide a global objective of the international civil aviation to be pursued, each one with its own capability and specific circumstances. Then I will leave it that the Secretary General will give more details regarding the global framework that is being just adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and good afternoon to all. as building on the President's elements that he brought about what happened this week, I would like to highlight three aspects. The first aspect is that this is the first positive, concrete step towards the decarbonization of international aviation. And this is done through a framework that adopts a vision to reduce CO2 emissions in international aviation by 5% to the year 2030 by utilizing sustainable aviation fuels, low carbon aviation fuels, and other aviation cleaner energies. The second element is that this framework sends a concrete, strong message about the consistency, the predictability to all the stakeholders, to the investment community, that aviation is serious about its efforts to decarbonization, and that we need to accelerate and scale up the production and availability of sustainable aviation fuels. As a result of this framework, the policies, the regulations, the route maps that different countries around the world are going to implement in order to accelerate the production of sustainable aviation fuels. And the third element that I would like to highlight is that this is an area that will require substantial and sustained investments from now until the year 2050. And ICAO is ready to work with states, with the airline industry, with the airports, and with energy producers and the financial sector in order to accelerate the access to affordable resources, financing, in order to materialize the projects. And also we are working with our member states, building their capacity, conducting the studies, accelerating their understanding of the elements needed so that we have global production of sustainable aviation fuels. I will not provide more details because we have here other experts on the table that I would like them to also contribute to this.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. I would like first His Excellency Saif Mohammed Suwaidi, the Director General of GCAA of UAE, to say a few words for the positive outcome and this landmark achievement here in Dubai.
Thank you, sir. It was an honor, really, to host this important event, and I really appreciate that ICAO elected UAE to host this event. I think we are so happy to witness the outcomes of this important meeting. And of course, UAE always in support to any outcomes that the aviation community agrees on. We will, of course, now explore the potential of these outcomes. We know that there are a lot of opportunities that need to be addressed, and of course, we will work with the international aviation community to address those points. And of course, we are will keep our support to the organization for future event. Thank you so much.
Shukran. And now I'll pass the floor to the industry representative. I'm starting with Haldane Dodd, that is Executive Director of ATAG, the Air Transport Action Group.
Thank you, Kostas. And just echoing the words of our previous speakers, This is a milestone day coming on the back of the historic agreement last year for net zero 2050 that was reached at ICAO. We've now been able to fill in one of the building blocks to help make that happen. And so it's an important step in that process. I think it's now time for others to join us on this journey as well. Obviously, we're going to need government policy to help make the transition towards cleaner energy happen, but more importantly, we're going to need the finance community and the energy industry on board in that process as well. And I think particularly under the leadership of ICAO, helping to make sure that this is a transition that can take place in countries all over the world, and that, as the famous saying goes, no country is left behind. We've made a lot of progress as an industry. We've set the benchmark for how to build a safe and sustainable new energy infrastructure over the last 10 years. Now is really the time to accelerate that and make sure that we can get where we need to get to in 2050. Thank you.
Thank you, Haldane. And I'll ask Mary Owens Thomsen, the Senior Vice President for Sustainability and Chief Economist of IATA, to say a few words.
Thank you. I too feel the need to express my immense gratitude to everybody here present and congratulate everybody on this absolutely stunning outcome, and my admiration knows no limits for all the hard work that has been achieved to produce this fabulous outcome. Now, I would like to take the opportunity to point out that there is very little SAF available in the world. In 2022, there was 0.1% of airlines' total jet fuel consumption available in the form of sustainable aviation fuel. Now, in 2023, we think that number is 0.2%. So virtually no SAF is available. And I hope that that also puts this achievement of the conference in perspective and shows how necessary it is to unite everybody's minds, and that we all together have a single focus on being able to deliver sustainable aviation fuel to the airline industry. Because as long as there is no other form of propulsion, we only basically have this as an option for our decarbonization. And this is why this is obviously our prime goal in our industry, because we also committed to net zero in 2050 already in 2021. So our desire is for the world to produce as much sustainable aviation fuel as possible on all continents in the world, and to give access to all airlines in the world to that sustainable aviation fuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And I'll ask now Michael Rossell, SVP of International Relations and Corporate Secretary of ACI World, for his remarks.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for being here. And absolutely thanks to the UAE for absolutely amazing arrangement of all of the facilities and all of the entertainment that we have had. Very much appreciated. I think it's events like this that bring us together as a community, as an aviation community. We recognize that this is an opportunity for regulators and industry to get together with common purpose. And from the airport membership, this is exactly the outcome that we were looking for. We really needed a framework, a regulatory framework, where there was predictability, where we were able to attract the investors, where we were able to attract fuel producers to say, look, there is a sustainable market for the production of aviation fuel, and that way then production can begin and it can be used. And I'm so glad that the airlines are here to be able to consume that sustainable aviation fuel, because that gives us real purpose. The outcome that we've achieved through a lot of conversation is ambitious and credible, and we believe that we've got a good story to tell when we go to COP28 next week. This is an outstanding outcome from this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And now I'll pass the floor to Glyn Hughes, the Director General of TIACA, the Cargo Association.
Thank you very much, Kostas. On behalf of the International Air Cargo Association, I'd like to offer my congratulations to ICAO and the member states for agreeing this historic global framework. Not only does it send a very strong message to the investment and energy communities, but it also sends a very strong message to the global manufacturers, shippers, producers, farmers and growers who rely on the air cargo industry, which obviously is built around the global aviation sector, for moving approximately 35% of international trade by value. So this historic agreement will actually go a long way to demonstrate this industry's commitment to achieving the net zero objective, and it'll also go a long way to securing tens and hundreds of millions of jobs around the world of people who rely on the commercial aviation sector to move their products to market. So congratulations once again.
Thank you. And last but not least, Daniel Carnelly, Vice President for ICCAIA, please.
Thank you, Kostas. And on behalf of the manufacturing community, I would like to thank very much the President of the Council, the Secretary General, the Secretariat, and of course all of the states that have reached this historic agreement that we've seen here this week. And of course a big thanks go to the UAE for hosting the meeting. Couldn't be a more appropriate place with the lead in to the COP, which here we've reached an agreement that really sets some good scene there for leading into next week. CAAF is the most important in a basket of measures for reducing carbon to net zero by 2050. There could be others. Marie has mentioned electric and hybrid and hydrogen as alternative methods of propulsion that are likely to come, but not for probably a decade or so yet. So SAF is going to be needed for a long time to come, probably well beyond the middle of the century, beyond 2050. The manufacturing industry communicated something about, I guess, a month ago or 5-6 weeks ago now, that we, as both engine and airframe manufacturers, are committed to being able to operate all of our products using 100% SAF by 2030. So again, the 2030 date is another key element there as well. Today, we've reached a big step on the road to net zero 2050. And we, as the manufacturing industry, have been advocating for some months that a 5% carbon reduction in 2030 is the way to go. We think it's credible, and we think it's also aspirational. Given that, we are very pleased to see that figure adopted today, and we congratulate ICAO on reaching that. It will give a level of certainty to financiers and fuel producers to begin or continue their investment. So congratulations once again.
Thank you, Daniel. And now open the floor for if there is any question. And please, I would like to state your name and media that you present. Is there any question from the floor?
Mustafa Abdulazim from Al Ittihadi newspaper, a daily Arabic newspaper in UAE. My question, first I would like to congratulate you on this achievement and the historical moment in United Arab Emirates. My question regarding the finance, how can you secure the finance for the achieving 5% SAF, and also the impact of this achievement on the end user? How do you can balance between the using SAF 5% and also keep the price of fuel or price of tickets and passengers in the same level now? Thank you.
I can say some word, then probably Iatrou will. This is a global framework that was absent till now. And we know that there are investors that would be able to invest provided that there is a perspective of demand. in this sense, this framework will not secure finance, but will provide a framework to determine a perspective of demand and consequently provide investors with more clarity on how this would be beneficial for their investments. The current production of SAF is very low and the cost is higher. But it's again an opportunity to increase the production and will be the market that will create the balance. So it's not the framework itself, it's not ICAO itself, but the policy that has been adopted that will incentivize investments and we create a better opportunity for production and balancing the cost. Hopefully, we would like not to see an increase on the ticket fares. We cannot anticipate so. But if we do nothing, of course, this will never happen. So we needed to provide this kind of framework.
Okay, I allow myself to add to that. And first of all, agree that it is the policy that will create the environment to make these investment propositions interesting to investors. If policies are long-term in nature and investors can have faith in that context will remain in place for a long period of time, that obviously makes it more interesting to consider setting up new production plants. And one part of the fabulous result that has been achieved here mentions a framework that is to be studied further, which is a framework that can allow the potential SAF producers access to a global market. And we tend to call this a SAF accounting framework. If you are a potential SAF producer in a small aviation market, you might not want to start your production because the local consumption would be small. If you can give that potential SAF producer access to a global SAF market, that instantly increases the attractiveness of that investment proposition exponentially. And by the same token, we are, of course, also interested in giving all our airline members the same access to SAF production. So I think that's a very key cornerstone of the agreement reached here, and I thank again everybody for having reached this agreement.
Thank you. Any other question?
Hi, good evening. Dina Kamel from the national newspaper in Abu Dhabi. As ICAO and other member states have also pointed out, the agreement today that was reached, while very impressive, is also not legally binding. So how hopeful and optimistic are you that states are going to stick by these policies that were outlined today? And then on the second point, or the second question, with regards to following up on the question on airfares, the increased cost of using SAF, who will that be passed on to? Who will be ultimately paying for that? Is it the passengers? Is it the airlines, the airports? Is it a shared cost? And the third and final question, the agreement that you carried out today, how do you hope for this to be translated into deals, actions, interest in COP28 next week? Thank you.
Yeah, I can refer to the first question and probably partially to the second, and then I will leave it for colleagues from the industry. But as regards to states, it is important to mention that states already are adopting the sort of measures, policies that creates a more firm framework, sometimes even a legal framework, with regard to sustainable aviation fuels. So international aviation works based on standards, global policies And this that we have concluded today is a framework that sets a very positive message in the right direction. So just to explain in a different manner, well, it's not binding mandatory, but it sets the right direction, and international aviation moves based on global standards. As regards to the impact to travelers, it's very early to anticipate any impact to travelers. Precisely, the importance of adopting this framework is because by scaling up the production and making the production available in different parts of the world, which is precisely the intention of this framework, we are going to address the economics of producing sustainable aviation fuels. As any new technology today, it's expensive to access, and much more so because we were hearing at the figures that exist, 0.1, 0.2 of the total demand. But when we start to scale up and make it more industrialized and present in different parts of the world, the economics will kick in. But I will let the colleagues from the industry to also mention that if they want.
Perhaps I can just pick up and sort of follow on from the Secretary General's comments there about the purpose of this. The reason that we wanted to have an outcome here is to send signals, to governments around the world and policymakers, and the framework does that, and it ensures that each government can make the best use of what it has locally, whether that be feedstocks that are available locally, processing pathways for SAF available locally, but also local policy measures, because every country in the world will have a different approach to the right policy to put in place. And it's important to make sure that you don't have one policy for the entire globe, because it doesn't work everywhere. And so this sends that signal to policymakers. It also sends a signal to the financial community that we are serious about moving in this direction, and that they need to start financing SAF investment. It sends signals to the energy industry for the same reasons as well. And I think it would send a signal to the COP meeting next week, even though international aviation is not included in the Paris Agreement and the COP discussions in an official way. This helps to guide the process there and to make sure that there's hopefully a positive outcome in the discussions there as well. So it's about sending signals.
I believe that it's helpful also to clarify what is the connection between the decision today, the framework adopted, and the COP28. We have to remind that international civil aviation and the climate change policies are dealt with within ICAO, as well as international maritime and climate change policies are dealt with IMO. So the COP doesn't address policies on climate change and aviation and international maritime. So in COP28, where we hope to have the opportunity to make the announcement, will be the announcement, of course, in perfect consistencies with the efforts of UNFCCC, but will not enter as part of the negotiations that will start on the 30th November.
Okay, thank you. Yes, again, the scale is so fundamentally important. With obviously more scale, as was mentioned, we can believe that the prices will come down. Now, is this purely a faith issue? No, because the world has done it before. It wasn't that long ago that we didn't have wind and solar energies, and then those energy production methods garnered the scale necessary to now be among the very cheapest energies in the universe. So this is, the scale is absolutely important for us as airlines to be able to afford the amounts of SAF that we will be buying in the future. And this will also help mitigate the price increases that would obviously to some degree have to be passed on to customers. And this is a concern for us because we are firmly of the, more than the conviction that all forms of transportation during the 20th century, the costs of all transportation fell radically, and that was part of why the 20th century was such an amazing century. So renewable energies in this context holds out the promise that maybe, if not the 21st, then certainly the 22nd century can again deliver those types of economic gains to everybody and improved economic outcomes for all.
With this, we conclude the press conference. It's already 9 o'clock in the evening. I would like to thank for your patience and be here tonight. And thank you, and I wish the best for next week in COP 2018 here in Dubai. Shukran, have a nice evening.